Welcome back to another exciting edition of the Pointless Exercise Podcast. It's time to remember this crap with Mike Donahue. Today we're going to remember the Matt Nagy era. No, we're not going to do that yet.
Is it over yet? Is it over?
I don't know. I'm just waiting to see what Hub says. Haven't heard much from Hub lately. I don't know what's going on. So we are going to. The Bears are playing the Vikings again. They seem to finish the season a lot with the Vikings in Minnesota.
Off the top of my head, 2011 when Urlacher got hurt in the last game of the year. They knocked him out. Even a disincentivized Bears playoff team, the only one that we've experienced in recent years. Did they not keep the Vikings out by beating them in the Metrodome? Or they may have, which was hilarious. I'm pretty sure. I know it's recent, but I think I've already established that I usually suck.
They did it. They played there twice with Mitch.
On the week,
on the
16
week
or
whatever.
17? Yeah, well, it would have been week 16.
Now, part of it, I think, is under the way they want to do it now, the final week will always be against a division opponent. So you only have 3 possible opponents.
Is that right? I didn't know that. That's a thing now, huh?
Yeah. So
I was not aware.
It's probably going to be the Vikings a lot. Because the Lions, you're in that kind of Thanksgiving rotation, so you'll have already gone to Detroit like they did this year.
Maybe.
The Packers. I don't know. They want to save Bears Packers for the last week because it gets good ratings no matter what.
Because of all of us idiots in the
so
Chicago
it might end up being the Vikings a lot. But anyway, so we are going to harken back. You know what we should have done? For no reason. We could have gone back to the Audible. We could have gone back to the Jim Harbaugh disaster in the Metrodome and relive that
30 years ago.
Sent it to George McCaskey and said, remember what this asshole did? But we're not doing that because I don't want to relive that. I have a great story about that. I believe I told it about how the minute that they threw the second interception, my friend Neil and I sent our friend Asshole's girlfriend Beautiful out to the bottle store, and she bought us all 30 packs of Old Style Light, and we drank them all that day.
You have told that story on this very podcast.
Yes.
Last year when we did 2 fresh
Another
original
reason why
Bears
I hate Jim Harbaugh.
Crap. Yes.
My liver and me both hate Jim Harbaugh.
It's been entered into the canon. The Mets, it's been sometimes a house of horrors. It was a weird play, although it wasn't as weird for football as it was for baseball. I've actually had the unique pleasure of watching both sports and the professional level there. Football actually, in a neutral sense, it was fine. I saw the 2001 Bears team, which were young and fast, flying all over the field, and football is very uniform with how everything is. Unless you have somebody that's going to boom a punt off the speakers, I don't think it's really a factor. Baseball is an unholy experience that I just couldn't get over. But having said that, the Bears, of course, have had some success in the Roller Dome, but none possibly quite as awesome as what we're going to discuss here tonight.
Right. So we're going to go back to a Thursday night, week 3 of the 1985 season. Special Monday Night Football on Thursday night. They couldn't even call it Thursday Night Football. With the immortal broadcast crew of Frank Gifford, Joe Namath, and O.J. Simpson.
You want to talk about remember some crap or remember this crap? You're three. Without looking it up, it would almost be hard to recall that for a 2-year period that was the crew. Yeah, Joe Namath, what OJ, Frank Gifford, there, and there's a reason why you could be forgiven for not remembering it because
we looked it up. Good. Joe only did it for a year. He said, "Fuck this, I'm done."
Oh, this was his only year.
OJ did it for 3, and Frank did it forever. So this was it for Joe. He was one and done. And when you hear him, you kind of see why.
It's probably the low point, now that I think about it, of the whole Monday night production dating back to Roone Arledge's inception in 1970. I think this would be this sort of transition between the Meredith, Cosell, Gifford to the Al Michaels, and whatever. I guess you got to give Deerdorf the credit. I mean, they're still
certainly
dragging
on ABC. They've had some rough years on ESPN, like when they had
right.
Joe Tessitore and the Booger Mobile,
Yeah.
and God, who was the color guy?
I would be more comfortable, in fact, if you drew the line at when they jumped ship because I'm not familiar with the ESPN broadcast through the years.
Oh, Jason Witten. How can I forget?
Right, who's playing again? Right? Is he still?
No,
he
went back to play, mostly to get out of the booth.
Last year, I remember this crap. Actually, you would informed me of the fact that he was back after having been in the booth for Monday Night Football.
He came back and
they changed a lot now. They actually got some stability when they settled on Deerdorf, Michaels, and Gifford until they threw Gifford out. I think. I don't know. But yeah, this was not a good broadcast. We're going to spare the listeners the whole game. Also interesting to note that we've at least made it a lot, made it more updated considering the last Bears Vikings game that we did was 1979. So at least we're ahead.
Although there's still a bunch of those guys.
There are, which I found very interesting.
Greg
I want
Coleman,
to make sure
Scott Studwell is still running around.
Studwell was in both games.
Tommy Kramer.
Kramer was the starting quarterback in both games. Pretty impressive, 6 years of pounds.
No,
I don't remember it. Was there a Ted Brown sighting in
this
game?
They put up that he was like the 4th all-time Viking.
Thank you.
Rusher during the game. So I don't think he played very much. Well, I can tell you how much he played. We have the internet.
And while you cue
that
up
right here
while you cue it up, I'll just point out that we're going to play the audio at a very critical point in the game, but we don't want anyone to miss out. So we'll kind of provide a quick synopsis of how things went in the first half.
Oh, Ted Brown was all over this game. 1 carry for 6 yards and 1 catch for 9 yards. How could you miss him? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna talk about the beginning of the game, and then we are going to pick it up, the actual broadcast, at the moment Jim McMahon finally has worn Ditka down, and he's gonna put him in, and then we're just gonna. It's not exactly a spoiler alert. The game happened 37 years ago. He throws 3 touchdowns pretty fast, and we're gonna go through all 3 of those drives. Yep. And then we'll wrap up what happened in the game. So it's about 20 minutes of game action that we're going to go, which is about what we typically use those condensed games. So it's about the same.
Yeah, I think it works. So coming into this game, the Vikings were a surprising 2-0. And they had gone 3-13 the previous season, and that was a season after which Bud Grant had retired after a long storied career as the Vikings coach. But apparently, the 3-13 season, the Bears clinching their first ever NFC Central Division championship, on their home turf in '84. All of this just must have enraged Viking Nation to the point where crusty old Bud Grant comes right out of retirement immediately and comes back, and in week 1, this team that went 3-13 defeats the Super Bowl champion, the team that went 15-1 the year before and plowed through their second Montana championship. They beat the Niners. They win week 2. They're 2-0. And here come the Bears, and of course, there's the probable Viking arrogance coming into this game because they're still fresh off, a dominant run, at least in the division. And who are these Bears? Yeah, they won a division last year, and they swept us and whatever. And that's kind of must have been going through a lot of their heads. And the Bears, of course, feeling confident because they feel like they're ascending, which of course they prove to be. But it got off to a little bit of a rough start. So it's kind of funny to see how quickly the Bears turned all that on its ear.
Yeah, well, I can see why the Vikings were cocky. The Bears had just won only their 3rd road playoff game in franchise history. How embarrassing was that they barely done that? You think about all the ones they've done since, like when they went to Minnesota and they beat the Vikings on New Year's Day '95, and that's it.
That's it.
4 ever.
But hey, at least one of them was in the hump dump. So yeah, it really does even out. There have been horrors, but there have been relatively.
Yeah, I think the Bears have only won road games at the Polo Grounds.
Or Yankee Stadium.
Probably Yankee Stadium. Probably Yankee Stadium.
Okay.
I think 2 at RFK.
It's definitely, certainly, at least one. That's all you need.
And the Hump Dome. And none of those stadiums are used for football. None of them exist. They're all gone.
The only thing I would want to know is
they're all gone.
If RFK 1984, is that the same stadium in which the Bears also beat the Redskins in 1940? And I think they also won the 43 championship in Washington. I don't know if that was RFK. Same city. So
whatever stadium they won it in Washington, it ain't there. There's not a stadium in existence other than Soldier Field.
I get your point.
I mean, Wrigley is still standing out for football, except for once a year.
No, but it is standing, but it's fitting that it's...
So outside of the city of Chicago, there is not a stadium standing that the Bears have won a playoff game in. Other than, I guess there's one notable exception, and that would be the Superdome.
Oh, New Orleans.
But that was a neutral site.
Yeah. Well, there you have it. So
I want George McCaskey to put that on the little fact sheet that they send out to all the candidates for the coach and GM jobs. That'll be good.
So what you see in the first half, what we'll spare you with tonight, but you're welcome to view it yourself. Various Viking sightings. And I'm sorry, I have to make a diversion this early in this and this is your fault. But in one of your pointless exercise newsletters last week, you provided a link to what I just thought was just indescribable gold, and it was the 1977 Sun Bowl with Pat Summerall and Tom Brookshire and Burt Reynolds.
I think it was David Roth from Defector that originally posted it.
Good.
And so I found it. I was like, this is great. The best part about it, if you watch it, you don't have to watch the whole thing, but you have to watch the beginning.
You have to watch the whole thing.
Is that they treat it like Burt is always doing college football. They don't introduce him. He's not the star of Gator or the longest yard.
Okay, here's my take.
They just let him do the stand-up like he's just one of the crew.
I will say that they would actually make a couple references.
Well, yeah.
Sometimes they'd make self-deprecating. He would be self-deprecating. Yes. He actually was a good analyst, though, when he chimed in. Like, he did a little bit of homework on I forget. What I loved about it was first of all that, and that's why you let us into it, was talking about them running over the border, and
which they freely admit in the telecast. They went to Juarez,
which that alone makes it worthwhile. It's also where it's just an amazing thing to watch. And the funny thing is, those three guys, we've talked about Summerall. We haven't really talked about Brookshire, and I've been thinking a lot about him because kind of a trivia answer. Like, he was the broadcaster before Madden revolutionized it. And it was Brookshire, and he was not bad at doing that. It wasn't like Madden came into like an empty cupboard and he just did it way differently. But Brookshire was a really good and pretty funny guy. But the thing about all those guys is they were all like around the same age and all played like major college football in the early to mid 50s. Burt Reynolds, of course, at Florida State. They talk about how Lee Corso was his back. Yep. There's so many references in that 15-minute clip, and then there are also so many. I'm going to bring it back here. There's so many players in that game that we would recognize as future pros, like James Lofton, frickin' David Woodley. I didn't know he was the LSU quarterback. And then, of course, there are actually not one, but two players in that game that are in this game tonight. And that would be Darren Nelson, who was Stanford's running back, Bill Walsh's Stanford's running back, and Willie Teal, whose name you're going to hear when we do play the audio. And Willie was like, it couldn't have been more than a freshman or sophomore and I don't remember which team, but he played in the 77 Sun Bowl. LSU. Willie Teal was from LSU.
I mean, the reason that CBS, so Tom Brookshire and Pat Summerall were the number one team on CBS.
And they were pretty good.
And they were good, but the problem was they were both functioning alcoholics. This is not me making a joke. They really were. And CBS intentionally broke them up because they were worried Pat was going to die.
I don't remember seeing that in the All Madden documentary.
And that was part of the reason to pair Pat with John. Pat's our best play-by-play announcer. He's a drunk. And him and Brookshire are literally getting drunk right up until game time, and then could both just do the game, completely suave and functioning, and then just keep boozing afterwards. And they literally that was part of the calculus of putting them together. To save Pat's life.
Whatever actually
he needed a liver transplant.
Consulted
at one point.
Them with that probably saved Pat Summerall's life, or at least extended it by 20 years.
Yeah, and I don't. They talked about Corso, but did they mention the fact that Lee wasn't just Bert's teammate? They were
He was his.
roommates.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay,
And
yeah, he played
Lee
the
has
same
brought that
position.
up.
Well, they're back. One was a backup to the other.
Lee had a nice little tribute on game day that when Bert died.
Okay.
Because they were legitimately friends for like 50 years.
It's crazy.
Ever since college, they stayed friends.
It
I'm
just
sure
made
Bert
me,
probably came. Bert probably came to DeKalb to visit Lee while he was coaching.
Think so?
Yeah, Bert was just hanging out
in the early '80s.
Yeah.
Just
went to Molly's and down to the.
Would have been
went
certainly
to McCabe's
was around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Alabama. All right.
So other various Vikings that you may have missed in the first half. They have this cadre of receivers, Mike Jones. There's Buster Rhymes that you've referenced before, not the same as the rap producer, but the rap producer did give himself the stage name of Buster Rhymes because of this player who, as it turns out, makes his first NFL reception later on in this game on a big drive. And of course, the pride of Ann Arbor, Anthony Carter, AC, who I have memories of going back to Notre Dame Michigan matchups from before. USFL star.
Frank obsessed with how little Anthony Carter is.
I know. And Carter was really good receiver for a while.
He had played in the USFL. Was it the Michigan Panthers?
It was the Michigan Panthers for 2 years, and then apparently they did something like they merged with another team. It was kind of the same.
He was no Tremaine Johnson.
Well, that's the thing. He kind of was. I was going to bring him up in the context of our guy Tremaine Johnson, and that I think Anthony was like the first ever MVP. I think he was a monster in the USFL. They also had two notable receivers. Steve Jordan, who's a very good receiver. I'm sorry, I said receiver. I meant tight end. Steve Jordan, of course, remember him, and of course, future NFL coach Mike Mularkey was another. And then. That other Scott Studwell, you said, Carl Lee gets a pick in the end, and then various Bears they made him as Tim Reitman, Brad Anderson, Calvin Thomas, L.A. Mike Richardson, Andy Frederick. There's an Andy Frederick sighting on the sideline, and also apparently an asthmatic referee, which seems like every time he's announcing a call, he's just struggling.
I had an issue right away with the referee. His name is Dick Jorgensen. Now, there is no way in the world that a guy named Dick Jorgensen should be allowed to do a Minnesota home game. You get the biggest fucking Swede you can find, and you let him do the Vikings game?
At least his name wasn't Sven.
Jorgensen with an E, even.
Right.
You can't get more Swedish than Jorgensen with an E. Bears were screwed from the very beginning. But he seemed
to have trouble being heard, but we'll hear a clip of him in the highlights, so we can get back to him. Other things you might have missed in the first half is not once but twice our guy Frank Gifford makes a reference to Bears defensive coordinator Buddy Curry.
Buddy Curry. The best is he actually the first time refers to him as the great Buddy Curry. So great you can't get his name right. And I had to look up. I'm like, all right, is there a Buddy Curry? Because there is, and he was playing linebacker for the Falcons at the time. He played 8 years in the NFL.
8 years. Okay, not a Hall of Famer.
So that's I was telling you before. It's a very hairy thing, which is you just think of somebody else when you when you get a name wrong. Right. Later on, Harry was mangling names so badly we couldn't tell who he meant. But for a long time, you could figure out. Okay, well, it's not. We know it's not Buddy Curry. It's Buddy Ryan, and we know why you think that. But
Rafael Palermo.
Yeah. Frank's going to have a rough. Well, Frank was just a rough announcer. He was bad.
He wasn't that good, and this is not one of his better outings. I think partly there was no chemistry. I don't think it's not a good crew, and it was short-lived. And
there are times when you assume the three can't hear each other. That they're all doing their own broadcast at the same time, and you're like, wait a minute, what? They're not. They all talk about something, and the other guys don't comment on it at all. They just wait for somebody to stop talking, and then they start. It's like, holy shit.
Disjointed would be the most charitable description I could make. So, but not to be outdone, by the way, as far as Frank Gifford confusing Buddy Ryan with Buddy Curry, is that OJ makes a reference to Bears defensive lineman Dave Hampton. Former Atlanta running back who we've discussed on Remember This Crap for having rushed for over 1,000 yards and then getting tackled for a loss. But that's neither here nor there. We see our guy Les Frazier makes an interception in the first half, 4 months before Steve Kaiser would end his career in the Super Bowl. There's some Peyton adulation. Of course, now Peyton has enjoyed over almost a calendar year of being the all-time leading rusher, and he's still getting 1,500 yards a season. a Greg Coleman sighting. And you were the one that I didn't even remember this, or I don't think I ever knew this at the time. But Greg Coleman, of course, was Frank's a little confused about it. We'll hear it because I think it's on the clip. But he is the cousin of
Vince Coleman,
St. Louis Cardinal Vince Coleman, and this is 1985, by the way. It would only the only thing that would be more perfect is if the 1987 Cardinals Twins World Series would be played in 1985, and that Greg's cousin would have still gotten eaten alive by the tarp on that field. But it didn't quite work out. But 85 was the year that Vince Coleman did not play in that year's World Series.
What if Frank had predicted it
about a month after this
on the market? His cousin Vince plays baseball for the Cardinals, and he needs to be careful. I've seen him; he gets a little too close to those automatic tarps before games. Those are dangerous.
Frank is just the savant seer. He can't get names right, but he can see the future.
Is this pre Kathy Lee?
It is, for sure. He might have been courting her. I think that became a thing in the 90s.
Do you know what Kathy Lee's job was when Frank started dating her?
Oh, I don't want to say what I'm thinking.
No, she wasn't a stewardess. Those were different. He got into stewardesses later.
That was later.
She was I forget what they called her, like the Bong Bong girl on Name That Tune. She was the one who would sing the lyric and then leave out the name of the song.
Okay.
So she'd be like, I can't even think of it, but she'd be like, doo, 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 and then bong, 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 or whatever noise she was supposed to make to let you know that that's where the name of the song is. And I'm not going to say it because that's what she did. They would have her singing long before she was annoying people on cruise ships.
And Frank, coming in between 2 days and flipping on the
Kathy Lee, as annoying as she was when she was young, it's a good-looking woman.
Oh, yeah. She was fine. I mean, the whole thing, she got increasingly wacky and crazy.
Yeah.
And
now, is she still getting drunk on the Today Show every day?
Was she getting buzzed?
Maybe they should get Tom Brookshire on with her. Oh, I think he's
That's
dead.
right. Unfortunately. Yeah, Frank also at one point in the first half, and just to characterize the offense, the real backdrop, of course, the drama, and they allude to it. What's going on here is that you see a couple shots of Jim McMahon sort of lurking the sidelines like a caged animal. The thing is, the Bears are 2-0, and they failed to advance the previous year. When they lost to the Niners in the game we've discussed ad nauseum, the whole line was that they walked off the field and the Niners were like, next year, bring your offense. And, it was like, if only we could keep McMahon healthy. And not even 2 games into the 85 season, he's not starting because he's banged up. I don't even know what he had this time. They talk about it.
Oh, they do. Yeah. He, so he spent the week in traction for a pinched nerve in his neck suffered in a win in Foxborough.
No, Chicago. It was still Soldier Field. Yeah,
okay.
week 2.
So a game in Chicago against the Patriots, their eventual Super Bowl foe.
Yeah, 20-7
and
victory.
The big deal was because it was a Thursday night game.
That's right.
Because clearly he's been shot up and he's up and around. And had there been a Sunday game, he probably would have practiced on Thursday, and this wouldn't have been a big deal. But he hadn't been able to practice, and so
that's a great point.
Ditka said, "Well, if you can't practice, you can't play," which is
that was his philosophy.
One of the bullshit coach rules that immediately gets broken in an act of desperation, or what does Frank keep calling it? Catastrophe.
Something like that.
Keeps referring to it's not the emergency quarterback. Jim McMahon is the catastrophe quarterback.
They all at some point.
No, that was Rusty Lish. That was the catastrophe quarterback.
Yeah, well, Lish was long. Ditka had long ago punted Lish into Lake Michigan. But all 3 of them had essentially rallied throughout, and I think even before the clip we would play, but they eventually all sort of come around to Ditka's defense as far as, well, I believe that Namath says some bullshit about if you don't practice, especially for a quarterback, I don't know if you should play, So that's going on too. The Bears are 2-0. We do have high hopes it will turn out to work out, but we're dealing with Fuller, who was good enough to get them to that title game with a couple of fluky plays. He was better than other backups we had, and he was not actually shitty in this game. In my first memory before rewatching it, I just in my own Mandela affected narrative, it's just like Steve Fuller was terrible and Ditka just got pissed off. He wasn't terrible. He got them down the field, but they kept settling for field goals. And you know what it felt like when I was watching it again? I'm like, this felt like every Monday Night Football game after the Super Bowl season for like 6 or 7 years, where often be close. If it wasn't a blowout in San to be often a close game where an inept offense just can't pull away because they can't get points. And so Fuller, he did have a couple bad picks, or maybe just one, but he wasn't completely horrible. But every time they'd get within the red zone, and they were stuffing Peyton, to their credit, the Vikings were, they just weren't getting points. So it wasn't like a completely inept offense, but certainly with what it was, and with number 9 making his presence felt, up and down the sidelines, like I said, like a caged animal. I think we're headed towards something. But one more thing about Frank, I wanted to say that at one point the Bears do go up 2 field goals, 6, or it's tied at 3, and the Bears, Butler kicks another field goal, and Frank tells us that the score is 6-0.
Yep.
No, Frank. And Frank also refers to Mike Richardson as he's really developed into a fine cornerback, and I think most Bears fans from that era remember that if there is a weak link on the 85 Bears defense, that'd be the guy.
It was L.A. Mike. Yeah, so some things that I learned. The Bears traded a draft pick for Maury Buford. Did you catch what round that draft pick was?
Was it like the 12th?
The 12th.
It was the 12th.
Worthy of a 12th round draft pick. Way to go, Maury. Maury was the all-time, and Frank referred to him as the all-time leading kicker in Chargers history.
Yeah, Frank.
I guess
Frank,
I don't know what that means. Was he really the punter, or was he Rolf Benershka?
No, he was
Rolf Benershka references in a row.
Absolutely. Well, it was a replay, but it came out typically in a Giants podcast. But yeah, he was Rolf Benershka's counterpart before becoming rookie Kevin Butler's counterpart.
Okay, early in the game, OJ says it's a good thing that the Bears are establishing the run with Walter because Walter has sore ribs.
I heard that. I remember that. I don't remember ever hearing Peyton.
Basically, I think OJ was trying to make the point that it shows that even with sore ribs, they're still going to run the ball. It didn't make any sense. It was very OJ. Frank said that the way he said it, I was like, holy shit, how would that happen? He said, through 2 games, the Vikings have 12 turnovers. And I'm like, oh my God, they committed 12 turnovers? No, he meant they had forced 12 turnovers, including 7 in the opener against the Niners. And then Frank said they won going away 28-21.
That's almost like a football a summary equivalent of line drive, caught, base hit, caught out there.
Now here's a weird thing. I couldn't find, so I went back and looked at the box scores for the 2 games. And yes, their credit was 7 turnovers forced against the Niners and 5 against Tampa.
Okay.
And you can see that there's 4 interceptions total in the 2 games. And when I look at there are no fumbles listed. It's just the weirdest thing. I assume there were fumbles that didn't make the box score in 1985.
Well, one thing that bothers me, I know,
or are they turnover on downs?
I don't think it is, but I do think turnover on downs should count as a turnover, and it always bothers me that they don't usually count that as a turnover. I don't know why not.
I did enjoy that at one point. Gifford, he promotes a piece that's going to be on the halftime show. Did you catch this? Dick Schaap has a great story. Frank has seen it. Great story on the fact the NFL is experimenting with this crazy technology of putting a radio in a quarterback's helmet. Never going to work. and they might bring replay back. And they talked about they experimented with replay in the
preseason games.
Yes.
Yeah, and they think that practice, I think, actually goes back to the 70s. They were really slow. They actually brought, and we talked about this on an earlier episode, but opening day 1986, the year after this, in Soldier Field was the first instance of that legitimate use of instant replay. So it was actually very close to being used in that earlier weird version of it.
At one point in the first half, the Bears are down towards the goal line, and they stop. They just grind to a halt because there's too much crowd noise. And you get to relive that wonderful era where teams just stood there at the line of scrimmage waiting for the crowd to get quiet. The dumbest thing ever. No
radios. No, I don't know why can they deal with that now and they couldn't do it then? It was just like the
NFL basically just said, you know what, tough shit. You're just gonna have to figure out other ways to signal plays, and that's what they did.
Yeah.
You could just stand there, and then they could. And I don't know what year the rules were different. Some years, you could actually the home team could actually get a penalty
I
if the
remember that.
crowd wouldn't shut up.
Which I was,
they could force you to use a timeout if the crowd
which
didn't
I
shut
was in
up. They tried
favor,
all kinds of shit.
I was in favor of that because I was like an 11-year-old meatball who resented teams that played in domes to begin with because it was always loud and scary, and the Bears always seemed to shit their pants in domes. So, but yeah, deal with it.
Yeah. They had a great graphic showing the final 6 games of the Vikings 1984 season, where they set an NFL record that unlikely to be topped. If Mark Trestman didn't break it, nobody's gonna. The Vikings lost their last 6 games of the Les Steckel regime, all by 30 points or more.
All of them, not an average of.
They lost them all by at least 30 points.
Incredible.
And that's why Bud said, "Fuck it, I'm coming out of retirement."
Right.
And he brought Jerry Burns back with him.
They
did. Catch that. So, Jerry apparently had retired too. Fine, I'll just quit. Jerry ended up coaching them after that.
They didn't show Jerry, but they do in the whatever shovel that he used to comb his hair. But they did. So is that? I thought it looked, because we've talked about Jerry Burns more than any healthy Bears fan should, but I thought the story was, I know way too much now about the Vikings than I should, but that Jerry Burns expected to be named as Bud Grant's successor, and that I thought he threatened to quit. But so maybe he actually he left.
Well, maybe
he may have. No, he may have quit. He eventually did get the job because I think Grant only came back for this one season. By the way. In fact, now that I look at it, and based on what we know now, there were some politics involved. He came back to give his buddy Jerry somehow his successor was not handled in the way that Bud wanted, and because they were so awful under Les Steckel, he was able to bring himself back in and set things right. So yeah, whatever. I guess it worked because the Vikings don't have a lot of long periods of being shitty, to be honest, and look at that one season's got to be one of their worst ever.
Now, just to be clear, this Jerry Burns we're talking about is not the Jerry Burns who was on the Judd Hirsch sitcom Dear John or on Justified.
I believe you said he spelled his name differently, or no?
Jere, where he plays the show's over, although I'm sure they'll bring it back because they reboot everything. He played the great Win Duffy on Justified.
I apologize. I watched a lot of television in the 1990s, a lot of NBC television, but I did not watch Dear John. Yeah. Just because there are only so many shows out there.
Let's see what else I learned in the first half. So the Vikings basically had 2 goal line stands against the Bears, forced them into short field goals. The second one, a comically short 19 yards by Kevin Butler. That was the one where Walter on third down was going to jump over the pile and Joey Browner, right? But nobody blocked him. Grabbed him by the ankles before he could jump. Not a great scheme.
Yeah, not a great game for Walter, and that's fine because we just did that Vikings game, which was one of his greatest ones from '79. But
OJ told us he got sore ribs.
Yes, and he also has a huge part in the narrative of tonight's action.
He gave somebody else sore ribs.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah, so when Butler makes the second field goal, Frank gets all excited. The Bears are up 6-0. They're actually up 6-3. Right before the half, Mike Richardson drops an interception. And like 4 plays later, Anthony Carter catches a touchdown pass to go up 10-6.
Yeah, the Vikings are up now. And
Bears kick a field goal to make it 10-9, and then the Vikings score to go up 17-9. Although Frank apparently misses that touchdown. And
is that still before halftime? They
went
up
after
17
halftime.
at halftime.
It's the second half. It was 10-7 at halftime. 10-6 at halftime. Bears kick a field goal. Vikings score a touchdown. And Mike Ditka says, "Fuck this. McMahon, you're in." Now, McMahon had been, and I didn't see it on telecast as much as I'm sure I've seen it on NFL films. Their recaps of it, where with Jim clearly annoying Ditka on the sidelines.
It's not obvious.
They show it a couple of times. You could see it, especially if you know to look for it. And of course in his book, and in McMahon, with an exclamation point, one of the great autobiographies ever written. He talks about how he basically was just from the time I think at the second goal line stand, he just badgered Ditka constantly.
I think McMahon's embellishing, but it is funny to watch. The first time, if you watch the video, 29:53, there's like the first, looks a little bit like a caged animal, but he's by himself. And Namath talks a little bit about Ditka's so-called philosophy. They show him again in this a little bit more in the second half. What was he doing in the second? I jotted it down. It was they show him without his helmet still, but the third time's the funniest because he's got at 107, he's got his helmet on and Gifford's sort of like laughing because and he does go up to this is the one he goes up to Ditka. It's not incendiary, but it is pretty funny when you know the context of what like McMahon's like. Now he's got his helmet on. He's basically without having to say anything, he's telling Ditka, "All right, I'm ready to go in now." I Ditka probably saw it. Ditka kept his cool. Like you don't sense that Ditka like reacts to what he says. That's why it does seem sort of underplayed. But he does say something, and it's probably just like get the fuck out of here, or not a chance, or like leave me alone. I don't know what we don't know what he says, but he definitely was.
I mean, one thing that we know happened now, but they didn't know at the time, was that not only did he put his helmet on, he took Steve Fuller's helmet and he went and he filled it with nachos and cheese. And gave it to Steve, and said, "Here you go, buddy. See if you can finish this." And that was pretty much the end.
Well done.
You can see a very confused Mike Tomczak too on the sidelines, hoping he doesn't have to go in.
Yeah,
and the fans at home not knowing yet that we also really do not want him to go in. But
correct, because I don't think we obviously hadn't seen him. It's only the third game of the season.
Oh, I'm sure we saw him light it up in preseason like every other Bear.
We may have, although starters played more in preseason. Then I will say that.
I'm sure McMahon was hurt.
Well, yeah.
All right, so now we're gonna get to the actual. So if you want to follow along at home, and I don't know why, I'll put the link. You watch the game if you want, but we're gonna start it here at
highlights
right about 1:21. They come back from commercial. The Vikings had just scored to go up 8.
Actually, I'm going to ask you just to back it up because it is funny because there's a little bit of like a rise before the fall.
All right.
After Jan Stenerud's extra point, I think I had 121. And this is where we're at again. Grant's back. They beat the defending champs. The old swagger's back. The Bears are going to go back to sucking. That's what the world looks like at this moment in time.
They're playing him loose. He splits the two linebackers right here. Singletary didn't get over to the strong side.
You can't let him inside down there either. You're playing over his nose. You got to make him go outside.
Well, in fairness to Singletary, you never know who's supposed to be covering whom in this type of defense.
You got to say who.
They better find out. It's going to be a long season.
Just makes it 17-9.
I
didn't mean to talk over that.
Well, I love that
Namath rhetoric.
Namath is like, well, if they don't figure that out, it's going to be a long season. Yeah, because the Bear defense in 1985,
right.
Joe was all over it. They were going to struggle.
But yeah, it was 17-9.
And we have a 17-9
there's the stupid horn.
The Vikings, they're 2-0. They beat San Francisco in the opener. They beat Tampa Bay. They lead the Bears.
And then what happened, Frank?
I think we now know what Ditka, how he measures a catastrophe. Jim McMahon is going to come into the game. We were told he would not be in unless something catastrophic happened. He has his helmet on. Steve Fuller has his helmet off. Maybe a catastrophe is measured by 8 points down midway in the third quarter.
See, Frank knew there was 8 points. He's going to forget.
Right. Also, Ditka fashion check, because I'm really delighted in, and that we've done about 4 games in the era. There's always like a completely different Ditka look. I never realized as a kid growing up that Ditka possessed such a diversity of looks. And so, just for the record, nice stripe button-down dress shirt, tie, hair's trimmed, so it's only slightly curly.
I guess I always have assumed that was a Tom Landry kind of thing. You know, Landry always wore the suit and the hat, and that was Ditka.
But I don't know if
paying homage until he finally said "fuck it" and wore the iconic sweater vest instead.
But I don't know that Ditka necessarily came right in doing that all the time. Is kind of my thought.
No, I kind of feel like he felt like I just felt like that was kind of the inspiration for it.
when he wore that outfit, when that selection came up for a particular week, I think he was very conscious of his mentor, that in a sort of this sort of biblical Christian salvation sense, kind of saved Ditka after he'd kind of played his way out of Chicago and bottomed out in Philly. So there was always that little bit of that piety, that rare piety that Ditka had, that was kind of deferential of Tom Landry.
So 17-9, and Jan Stenner is going to kick off, and he's got to kick off to the greatest returning tandem in Bears history, because Devin Hester only one man, but
it's
Willie Gault and Pinky Gentry. I mean, come on, just kick it out of bounds, Jan. Why?
By the
don't
way,
even risk it.
In the first half, one last thing, Gault in the first half returned a kick to about the 38, and Gifford told us accurately, I assume, that it was the longest kickoff return of Willie Gault's career, and that would change in dramatic fashion in 10 days. And that's all I'm going to say.
Deep for the Bears. Gentry is back there, 29. Willie Gault has come close to popping 2 of them tonight. Keep in mind he has that world-class sprinter speed 5 times at Tennessee. He took a kickoff for a touchdown, 1 short of the NCAA record.
Oh, wow.
Jan Stenerud will put it up.
He definitely was a world-class athlete.
Vikings leading 17-9. Willie Gault wants it. But he had to let Dennis Gentry take it. Gault stepped right in front of him, and Gentry goes to the 30-yard line. Out comes Jim McMahon. We told you.
So when they lined up for the kickoff, the ball gets kicked to the Bears' left hash, I guess, going. That was the side Willie was on.
I know.
So Pinky must have run over and cut him off to return the kick.
Yeah, I don't know what the deal is with that. Maybe Willie didn't want it in that particular one. Maybe because he was saving up for this next play. I don't know. It could have been it.
All right, so Jim McMahon is coming in, and little punk kid on a couch in Durand, Illinois, is very excited.
As is the entire region.
Pinch nerve in his neck. He was in traction after the game on Sunday. Has not worked out this week. Ditka was pretty positive he would not play him. Said he needed to practice if he was going to play. And his 2 wins over Tampa Bay and New England. Jim is 36 of 55, 65.5%, 3 touchdowns, a couple of interceptions. We told you earlier, missed 7 games last year, all of the playoff games with a lacerated kidney, as Fuller started 4 of those last 6 games of the season. But here he is, Jim McMahon.
So YouTube decided that they'd like to play an ad now.
That's all right.
Doesn't every home in the U.S.
But we're not going to listen to their stupid free ad.
It's a nice lead up, though. Gifford was actually somewhat succinct and clear, I think, going right up to that snap.
Yeah, he actually did a nice job of setting it up.
Yep.
Young University has taken over for the Bears. Pressure on the first play, and right open.
I love it!
Willie Gault, forget it. If he gets behind you, it's over, and McMahon paid the price, but he got the touchdown, 70-yard touchdown. He really got hammered just as he released the ball.
Joe Namath screaming, "I love it!" right in the middle of the of Willie running.
It's kind of fun. I'll allow that. I'll give Joe some points for that. Actually, the enthusiasm. At least that's in character with Broadway Joe. He's seen a swashbuckling quarterback that he's probably taken a little bit of a liking to, like, pull this shit off. What was that? A 60-yard pass?
70-yard
pass. Man, first snap, folks. So.
And that's Johnson was coming on the blitz. I don't know whether he was the man that got him, but what a great shot, hitting Willie Gault right in stride.
Well, Walter Payton made it happen because he picked up that middle linebacker who timed his blitz perfectly. Watch 55.
Watch 55, OJ. No, it's not OJ. OJ would have blocked the wrong guy. He would have got Joe Ferguson killed.
It tells us to watch the guy that Mark Bortz is not having any, I assume it's Bortz, or possibly Thayer, is not having any trouble with.
52. Walter Payton picked him up. The blitz was perfect, and a beautiful pass by McMahon to one of the fastest humans.
Great block, great reception, great route.
McMahon never saw the completion. He was buried right after he delivered the ball to Willie Gault. So lightning has struck.
when I was young and able enough, I was able to.
It's the first play of more than 30 yards that the Vikings have given up this year. That was 70 yards. Butler for the conversion. This game is back to within 1 point.
So why didn't it go for 2 and tie it? Oh, that's right. There's not a rule in 1985.
Such a simpler game, at least for coaches.
Couldn't go for 2.
Nope.
Yeah, so just the whole idea that he badgers his way into the game, and on the first play, he throws a 70-yard touchdown pass.
Pretty ballsy. It was all with just. There's no other way to see that, man. He just totally no. It's just what a moment, like you said. You're a 12-year-old kid. I'm a 13-year-old kid. It was just an incredible moment to see a guy. This is why we love sports. That's all I want to say.
Well, the Vikings tried to fool Jim there. They knew it was his first play of the game. He was excited. They figured they'd come with the all-out blitz and fool him, but Jim read it perfectly. And I have to reiterate what O.J. said. That was absolutely great play by Walter Payton picking up that blitz.
And there is Willie Gault with the great speed. He was wide open.
Willie Gault, we will say a lot of things we have and we will. I ran into a neighbor of mine and we started talking about the Bears, and he told me something that I thought was completely, he had no idea what the fuck he was talking about. And he told me that that we talked about this game because he listens. Caesar listens, actually. Got a real life neighbor that tunes in, and we somehow were talking, and I said, well, we're probably going to do this game. And we talk about this touchdown that just happened. And then he's like, isn't that crazy that that's his only touchdown that he scored that year? And I thought he was full of shit. And I looked it up, and it was. And that's not even a knock on Willie. He had like a really good start to his career. He had 8 touchdown receptions as a rookie. I think he tapered off the next year. He did catch one in the Super Bowl. But yeah, fun fact. This is the only touchdown that Willie Gault caught all season, and he started all 16 games. Just kind of a weird.
This is a very 80s thing. He is standing in front of the camera on the sidelines, basically doing the hi mom.
Wait till Silky D does it.
But it was such a well-thrown ball.
Willie might very well be saying hi, just looking at himself.
Yeah, I think he's saying
hi.
Buster Rhymes is back for the Vikings. Kevin Butler will put it in play. 17-16. Minnesota still leading, and a beautiful kick by Butler.
We don't see a Buster Rhymes.
The Minnesota Vikings will have it on the 20-yard line. Here's Joe.
Butler got 5 extra yards because they Vikings lined up offsides on the extra point, so then he could boot it right through the end zone. Now we're seeing a very young-looking Joe Namath.
With a solo shot, like in the frame. It's like the camera's on Joe and nobody else.
Appears to be talking it into a tennis ball, too.
Just right for the Bears on that play. It was pretty good defensive philosophy. A quarterback comes in the game. He's cold. He's a little bit nervous, so let's put the pressure on him. Well, it didn't work that time, obviously. Jim McMahon's too smart for it, along with Walter Payton. Walter Payton did a terrific job picking up Dennis Johnson right there. And Willie Gault in a one-on-one situation, well, we all know by now he's very difficult to keep up with. What a pass by Jim McMahon. Great play, all-around offensive play. Fine play.
McMahon held it until he saw Gault clear. He never saw the completion. 70-yard touchdown to Willie Gault. Great effort made possible by an all-around football player, Walter Payton. 1st and 10. The Vikings leading by 1. Kramer, and that ball almost picked off. Mike Richardson had a good shot at it. It's incomplete. It'll be 2nd down and 10.
So one of the things, Frank is going to continually refer to the last time Tommy Kramer faced the Bears, and he threw 5 touchdowns. And then he says, oh, that was 1982. Like, all right, Frank, that's a completely different Bear team, basically, than
this is what's funny. It happens to be equidistant in time from the 79 Vikings game that we did a few weeks ago, which also starred Tommy Kramer. So I guess if nothing else, it's a reference point, I suppose.
Like that, I think, has a tendency to even fire up the Bears' defense as well. They have the leader back in there talking to McKinnon today in the meeting. He said
Jim McMahon
just fires up the team when he's in there. He's a heck of a leader, a heck of a competitor, and it looks like he's picked up the defense as well.
Willie Gault now having his finest game of his pro career. 5 receptions on the night, 132 yards, the 170-yard touchdown.
That is not Willie Gault's finest game. Did you just say that was Willie
7
Gault's
minutes
finest
remaining
game
in the
already?
third quarter. It's been that kind of a football game.
Oh, I believe it was wasn't his career high for yardage already?
No! He caught 2 touchdowns from Walter Payton.
Good defensive play on the part of both clubs. Kramer spinning out of trouble again. And this time fires it up there, gets it to Leo Lewis, who makes a super catch. That is one of the most difficult catches in football.
So that's very frank. You can read Steve Jordan's name. Oh, that's a nice pass to Leo Lewis, who makes a tough catch right there. Toughest catch you can make.
He did call Leo Lewis.
Frank, can you read?
It's not even 2 different receivers. I think they talk about how small, or maybe it was Carter.
Well, look,
Leo
they're
Lewis small,
not that you really can see this. They're standing right next to each other right here. Steve Jordan is twice the size of Leo Lewis. They're literally right next to each other. And then Frank goes into this long explanation of how the low pass is the hardest one. This is a guy who
a screenshot of that.
So, when who was the guy that knocked Frank out for a year? The guy from the Eagles,
Chuck Bednarik.
Would Frank wish he had been bending over for a low pass instead of just running head high right by Chuck? Probably.
That is incredible.
It's like, again pressuring Tommy Kramer out of the pocket.
And if I was
Minnesota.
If I was Richard Dent, I'd go straight to the official. I don't know how they missed that holding penalty. He's talking to the official now. He beat his man at the line of scrimmage. Kramer was dead meat, and he
ramping up.
All right, well, we missed the first one.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to talk over an OJ double entendre.
Yeah, so on the replay of the Willie Gault touchdown, OJ says something that now, in hindsight, is hilarious and chilling. He says, Willie Gault is one of the fastest people, a long pause, living. Sounds like a threat.
An infinite treasure trove of double entendre.
And here what he just said was, he was talking about how Dent was complaining to the ref that he got held. And I'll just got to find it. So we might as well listen to OJ.
Yeah, play it again. No, because I talked over. I didn't mean to. I was still laughing about Frank.
Remaining in the third quarter. It's been that kind of a football game. That's the first big play we've had. But it has been, I promise you, a hard-hitting game. Good defensive play on the part of both clubs. Kramer spinning out of trouble again. And this time fires it up there, gets it to Leo Lewis, who makes a super catch. That is one of the most difficult catches in football, pulling it off your shoestrings.
He never corrects himself,
Dent
does he?
again pressuring Tommy Kramer out of the pocket. First down, Minnesota.
If I was Richard Dent, I'd go straight to the official. I don't know how they missed that holding penalty. He's talking to the official now. He beat his man at the line of scrimmage. Kramer was dead meat, and he was grabbed. His jersey was grabbed from behind.
He was dead
I'm telling you, folks, the man knows what he's talking about. Richard Dent was. Yeah.
I mean, if I was Richard Dent, I would act like that man was delivering glasses to my ex-wife's house.
Oops.
That's what I would say.
I'm sorry. Time machine. 9 years early. 9 years too early.
Oh.
Yeah. OJ's still a rising star.
First down, 30-yard line. Kramer looking it over. He wanted to go outside to Leo Lewis. He had to finally check it off to Allen Rice.
Once again. I'm sorry. He did have that right.
Minnesota, they have to throw the ball deep now, Joe. These guys are just sitting on those short passes now, and they're just taking shots at the ball when it's released.
Well, that last time,
I didn't know there was there's a female Ragnar?
Kramer from throwing it early. But with one-on-one coverage, I'd like to see him go deep, too.
Last time Tommy Kramer played against these Bears, he really blew them away 35-70 at 5 touchdowns.
When was that, Frank?
Over 340 yards.
Give us the year.
That was back in '82. He hasn't played against the Bears since then because of injuries.
Missed four games against them, but it's still relevant.
Right. Meanwhile,
this time, nowhere to go. Down goes Kramer inside the 25 to the 24.
It's a fact that he holds on to. He just has to get it out
long
there.
Yardage.
Irrelevant.
Third down and
16. This should be fun.
I promise you, those 4 down linemen, Dent, Hampton, McMichael, and Hartenstein will just let it fly.
Hartenstein's okay.
Kramer, the protection is picked off, however. This is Wilbur Marshall.
It's as good as a punt, Tommy. It's fine.
And Marshall brings it back to the 25-yard line. That time, Kramer had a lot of time. a poorly thrown ball is picked off.
I think that's the first time tonight that
First career.
Minnesota didn't show the patience that they need. They still have a 1-point lead, and I think they should have been a little more patient, try to get a little of it back, punch the ball, and hope that
16,
their defense
OJ.
can do the job. They've been doing it all night. Wilbur Marshall
It's not a big
did
deal.
an excellent job of reading it and does a fine
Punt
job of
gets
running
him
with the
20
ball after
yards
he
here.
caught it.
Doesn't
His
matter.
first career interception, and it gives the Bears the ball inside the 26-yard line of the Minnesota.
So a nice shot of Wilbur with a popped collar back from his days, probably
He's,
in Gainesville.
Ahead of his time. Yeah, quite possibly. Yeah.
Yeah,
he's
so we
second
learned
year
there
player.
that's Wilbur's first career interception.
So a couple of firsts, Wilbur's first pick, and Busta Rhymes, not the rapper, but the football player after whom the rapper named himself, gets his first reception in this game. So that's pretty cool.
And
Go on,
we had seen Mike Richardson drop 2 interceptions already in this game, but that one was apparently Tommy's first mistake of the day.
Yeah. The other thing,
I guess it's not a mistake to throw the ball near Mike Richardson because he's not going to catch it.
The other thing is that we've talked about some of these games. I think we may have broken 1 or 2 down. The Packers game might have been an example where the defense was just a little bit, kind of just takes them a while sometimes to get revving up, And the McMahon thing helped because they were in trouble and they were in legitimate trouble in this game. Remember too, the Bears won the first 12 games of the season and they, were knocking on the door of history, and that could have all gone for naught here in week 3. But it is funny that once McMahon comes in, it wasn't always just McMahon, but there are a lot of times where the defense or the offense couldn't get going. The defense gives up a few touchdowns. It happened in week 1 when they gave up 28 first half points. It's just so funny that once the game kind of settles down and the Bears slowly take the lead, in this case it was quickly, but the defense then just becomes this assault machine for the rest of the game. And that's pretty much where it's starting to go from here.
We're going to get an ad here again in a second. So after the oh, crap. Having technical problems here.
You got it.
So after the interception and Wilbur's return, the Bears now have the ball on the Viking 25.
33 remaining in the third quarter. Minnesota leading Chicago 17-16. McMahon firing. McKinnon. Touchdown. McMahon has thrown 2 footballs tonight. 2 touchdowns, a 25.
He's only thrown 2. He didn't warm up.
Earlier, a few moments ago, if you were not with us, a 70-yarder to Willie Galt. This is hard to believe.
Does he make things happen? Positive things for this offense.
Andy, I'm going to ask you to play this again only because I'd like to real quickly draw a comparison to Frank Gifford and the aforementioned Pat Summerall. Because all right, they were both contemporaries, and the oddities where they went into broadcasting and became play-by-play guys. They were former NFL players. This sounds like a Summerall call, but the Summerall call was like calculated by Pat. This play, I think, like Gifford sounds confused. And maybe I'm wrong, and that's why I asked just to play it again, because he's minimalistic, but it's like it doesn't. I don't know. That maybe I'm now just piling on Frank, but it just sounded. I mean,
Maybe save that for the stewardesses.
It's
remaining in the third quarter. Minnesota leading Chicago 17-16. McMahon firing. McKinnon.
I guess
touchdown.
not. I think that's been
McMahon
harsh.
has thrown 2 footballs tonight.
Thanks for sharing that again, because
2
I enjoyed it
touchdowns,
both times.
a 25-yarder there to McKinnon. Earlier, a few moments ago, if you were not with us, a 70-yarder to Willie Galt. This is hard to believe.
Does he make things happen? Positive things for this offense.
They actually seem more subdued on this one.
Things are getting more exciting, and they're like, oh, he's
right. Okay, so that's not just me.
It's an odd play. It's a rollout to his left, so he's rolling out against his body, and clearly it's supposed to just be a simple pass into the flat, and the Vikings must have taken it away, because then you see him not only look upfield, but have to turn his whole body, and he throws a pass that Joey Browner just about intercepts.
And he's falling backwards while he throws it. So it is kind of awesome in that improvisational sense. And I'll be honest, I didn't quite remember this play like in that way. In my head, it was 3 bombs. But it kind of adds to it now that I've seen it again, because it was just sort of a improvisational McMahon play that worked out. It was lucky, and McKinnon's a tough guy that's going to pull that one in too.
Get up there, speed can get to the interception defensively. That ball hung up there.
But it's Joey Browner.
That was perfectly timed.
So he's not good.
Right.
Kevin Butler for the conversion. And the Bears have retaken the lead.
But they do seem pretty subdued. Maybe I'm disappointed as a Bears fan that they're not more excited.
What a football game. And this man has put some electricity into it. Jim McMahon.
Yeah, I
Colorful,
feel it, Frank.
Fun, and rather skillful.
2 of 2, 95 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Is that good? Seems good. And there's Jim McMahon doing the high mom.
So
2
they just
passes,
got the
2
stationary
touchdowns.
high mom
The man
camera
blinked.
going on.
Finally.
Yeah. Jim's feeling
He
good.
is intense.
I think
He
he's
is very special.
saying
That's not
hello
an
to his
adjective.
lovely wife, Nancy. I know she's sitting at home and on the edge of her seat and certainly concerned because of
Why'd
the
you get to
injury.
drop her name, Joe?
Joe, hey, Nancy. I know you're alone. Maybe I could. Where exactly are you, Nancy? Would you like? I'd like to be on the edge of your seat,
about the
too.
23-yard line. Let's take a look at McKinnon now, Joe, in
It
isolation.
seemed a little.
Yes,
little,
again, this is a
boundary
fairly
breaking.
dangerous pass for some people to be throwing, but Jim, with the
He
velocity he
got
can
lucky
throw the
so it
football,
worked. That's the whole point.
knows he can get it to him, and McKinnon just simply outruns Browner. It was an inside-outside coverage by Browner and Vest, but neither one of them kept up
It
with
is
him.
kind of a
I
lucky
don't know
thing
how he got
McKinnon
that
didn't
much
get
on it. Falling
decapitated.
away to his left. He rolled to his
Yeah.
left. He's right-handed, of course. Still was able to get the
That was-
velocity
it was
on
an
I think
incredible
Browner
pass.
was the inside guy, not the
That's
guy coming
true.
over the top.
Yeah, because he hit people.
The catastrophe quarterback.
The catastrophe
2
quarterback.
completions, 2 touchdowns.
He's
Vikings
big on
now
that.
trailing
Frank,
23-17.
second let it go. Just like Buddy
Ball at their
Curry.
own 22-yard line. Kramer gets it to Anderson. And Anderson is met at the 25-yard line. The game
Durson.
of about 3. It'll bring up 2nd and 7.
Come on, tell us who
Dave
that is.
Durson was there
There it
defensively
is.
for the
Spotter
Bears.
got to him. So we've seen Wilbur and Dave Durson, the 2
Second
replacement
down and
players in
7.
'85.
Kramer dancing around, but he finds Anderson, and Anderson slips, but he
Dumbass
gets the
guy.
first down over the 35-yard line.
Just fencing about ready to.
A good
Put a
move
stick
by
in him.
Anderson, finding the dead spot in there, and they have to give the offensive
Good
line
move,
of the
falling
Minnesota
down.
Vikings credit. Tommy had a lot of time back there to find the receiver.
Doesn't happen often.
Brad Grant, having returned this year, now in his 18th season, 4 Super Bowls, all of them lost by the Minnesota
Yeah, that's right.
Vikings.
Yeah, one of the things I don't think Bud gets enough credit for is not only did he coach in and lose 4 Super Bowls, but he did a nice job playing the old sergeant in White Christmas.
I'm sorry, I've
Ball
never
376
actually seen
against
White
the Oakland
Christmas.
Raiders.
I thought you were going to go the
11
Harry
times,
Morgan
17
reference.
years, Bud Grant won this Central Division.
Colonel
Last year,
Potter.
of course, the Bears won it for the very first time with a 10-6 record. First
Yeah,
and
is that the
10
part where they say the
Vikings.
Bears won their
Near the
first title of any
37-yard
kind
line.
since
Yep.
1963, and it was
Right,
the
'cause
NFC
Central.
Central. How
Yep,
exciting.
at the North. That was their first one. But of course, their first of 5 in a row.
Gain of 7.
This is one of the reasons
And 6 out
Minnesota
of
should have
7.
showed a little more patience on that 3rd and long before. I think that was the first time they.
Oh, there's
panicked
Darren
somewhat.
Nelson,
They've been
Darren
moving
Nelson.
the
and
ball
for Lum.
very successfully here in the second half, doing just what they're doing now. A
You know,
few runs and short passes.
The third down.
There's
and
just a
16 situation
banner
that
on
they
the
had
wall
on
back
the
there that just
interception.
says,
Mighty tough to
"Go
downfield with those linebackers that
Mike
deep.
Malarkey."
The Mike Milwaukee fan club.
Yep.
Few bad passes Kramer has thrown tonight.
How many
but it
future
resulted
coaches are on this
instantly
field?
in
You
a
got
Bears
Singletary and
touchdown.
Frazier.
Anderson gets away from McMichael, but not Dan Hampton.
It's fun to see him swarm. Look at all those awesome players.
Third
on
down and
defense.
5.
3rd and 5.
Vikings
What's going to
at their
happen
own
here?
43-yard line. 2:24
Oh.
remaining in the 3rd quarter. Tommy Kramer.
Ooh, even better,
The
3rd and
Vikings
10.
jumped.
The whistle stopped the play.
Here comes your ref.
Yeah, one of those
Yeah.
linemen pulled his
I'm
hand
out of
up.
breath.
False start, number 71. Offense, still 3rd down.
It's not out of breath.
Things are
There's
getting
just
a
something
little
funny
shaky
about
for the
how he
Vikings
talks.
here in the 3rd quarter.
Good old number 60.
The pass
Yeah.
that
There's no
Tommy
Jerry
Kramer
Merck.
had picked off
Tell you
was
that.
one
Dick
he should not
Jurgensen.
have thrown.
Jurgensen.
And now movement on the line.
Ooh, baseball scores.
Baseball scores.
Toronto, of course.
This,
So
of
yeah,
course,
the
should be the
Tigers
Don
over the
Dakinson World
Yankees.
Series. Yep.
Angels over the White Sox 1-0, and that was in the 7th. And
Eventual World Series champion Kansas City Royals embroiled in a 2-2 tie in the 7th inning.
with Siatke.
Yeah, they would win the World Series, by the way, thanks to Don Denkinger. Cheers to Kansas City. And Don
I
Dankinger.
have no problem with that.
Of course, leads the Yankees in the American
Looked like a good call to me.
going into today.
Frank will tell us about a baseball happening going on tonight when the Vikings punt before. I think it's coming up at the end of this drive. Now, I think Frank has baseball in his mind.
There you see part-time action in baseball in the American League. 3rd down and 10 now for the Vikes.
They're not picking this.
Kramer.
Hey, nice pass, Tommy, to nobody.
Going in the general direction of Buster Rhymes.
The general direction.
Crowd is getting a little antsy. Tommy.
Oh, they're getting booed.
Yeah, they got booed after their last 3 and out too.
Greg Coleman comes out now. The punter from Minnesota.
The friendly Swedes and Norwegians turned on the Vikings.
I think it was earlier, unless he says it now. I think it was earlier. No, wait.
Greg Coleman's brother Vince, stole his 100th base. His cousin brother stole his 100th base tonight for the Cardinals.
On the night that Vince Coleman steals 100 bases as a rookie, Frank Gifford does him the honor of confusing whether or not he's cousin or brother of the Vikings player.
Good coverage by the Vikes. They hold McKinnon short at the 32-yard line, where it'll be 1st and 10. 40.
Now on that, Silky D did something you don't see these days. Because it was a short punt, he caught that on like a dead sprint coming forward.
And then kept running.
That is a good way to get your head knocked off of the rest of your body.
Or get paralyzed.
1-yard punt, 8-yard return, but a flag is down.
Uh-oh, somebody cheated. The Vikings.
Bring
it back. We're doing it again.
Procedure.
Vince Coleman's cousin brother is going to have to punt again?
No, Jim McMahon came out, waved it off. Give me the ball. I want to throw another touchdown.
Right, I'm hot. I've only thrown 2 footballs tonight, according to Frank. I haven't even warmed up.
And they do indeed decline the penalty, so the Bears will have a 1st and 10, the ball at the 32-yard line. Quick count by McMahon.
Of course, it doesn't happen right away, but it almost does. But Galt wouldn't have scored there. That's why he didn't catch it.
Please. That would have been 3 for 3. And McMahon is saying,
just missed one.
Put it there. You catch it.
You might want to say he dropped it at about the
McMahon underthrew it, I think, though, did he?
These are the passes Willie normally do.
Yeah, Willie had to slow down.
Yeah,
he has him. The ball, he's kind of fading back and outside a little bit.
Like OJ starts. OJ starts by saying, these are balls that Willie normally catches. No, OJ, he catches balls when he's got nobody within 10 yards.
Wouldn't tell you he could have had it. It would have been a darn good catch.
Well, not the only way he could have caught it.
Would have been a tough catch. It was not a great
He's trying to catch it, keep some stride, and get into the end zone.
Whatever, assholes.
2nd down and 10. Again, quick count by McMahon.
Oh, the great Kenny Martram.
Martram, former Stanford All-American, has 1st down yardage out of.
Kids, if you're wondering, Kenny Martram was the Cooper Kupp of his time.
I would say a contemporary, you could say the poor man's Steve Largent.
For the 45-yard line.
He's got white shoes on, though.
Yeah, Willie too.
Famously, black shoes in the Super Bowl. He looks slower. That's what
he is giving about his. I guess
and the one bear that I was able to exchange a high five during the parade.
Just about
he was on top of the bus.
According to the stats he just showed, he had over 1,000 yards in his career there, which would have made him like the 3rd all-time Bears receiver. He might still be number 3.
Kenny Martram was very good his first couple of years when he was healthy. He actually was.
Bad knee surgery a year ago. Missed all of last year.
Oh, I think this might be the start of knee talk during the broadcast, where Joe gets really into all the guys with bad knees.
Time remaining in the 3rd quarter. McKinnon in motion. Movement and contact before the ball.
More cheating by the Vikings.
So Thayer's in here now. I think
some kind of a deal.
Becker was in earlier.
Yeah, he was injured a lot early. He really basically lost his job to injury. And I don't think anything was there.
But in the interior,
so not a good start for Tommy.
Oh, that was on Thayer. Yeah, way to go, Tommy. They teach you that shit with the blitz? Is that what happened?
At right guard.
It's like George Allen was
who was a questionable starter tonight because of the bruised back and tailbone.
Oh, look at the graphics on ABC. The little bar charts actually
appears to me that the Bears certainly aren't going to set on this league. But
earlier in the game, they had a drive chart, and they showed the field, and then there were these little squiggly lines to show where the passes went, what yards they went from. It was the height of technology.
On the other side, they know they need to get some more points. They're going full.
Who's the cool guy, man? With the sunglasses on at night in the dome.
Exactly what I was wondering.
Long count. Man, that ball incomplete.
Another ball bounced
Willie
off
Gault
Willie.
does not hold on. Short of the first down.
James McMahon is on the sidelines, but I would call it that. Put me in,
Second
coach.
down and 15.
Right. I think, didn't he have a coke problem, James McMahon? I think he did. Was that 81?
He was a catastrophe quarterback. If Fuller went down, we presume Tomczak went down. Fuller struggled through the first half.
Oh, McMahon's numbers going in the tank. He's now 3 for 5 for 108 yards.
He instantly, on the first play, hit Willie Gault for a 70-yard touchdown. They got the ball back a few moments later on an interception. He went right to the air again on his second pass of the game. He hit Dennis McKinnon from 25 yards out. The Bears in the lead, 23-17.
Get ready to update that recap,
on,
Frank.
looks down and out over the Minnesota defense. Second down, 15. That's Willie Gault.
Willie with the stiff arm.
Close to a first down. I think he
got him
has
the first down.
Isaac Holt giving
Had to
Gault
play
a
Willie.
lot of
Told
room.
Ike Holt to
Way
just,
too much room.
Kiss
I
some
was going
turf.
to say to Joe, that was a record cushion on a receiver.
Look at
I
OJ.
tell you,
He's bringing the
Isaac
jokes.
Holt must have been 15 yards away from Willie Gault.
I think
He
we
was a
never mentioned
world-class athlete.
Gault had his eye right on that first down marker. I tell you, when you're dealing with a guy who probably would have been a sprinter or perhaps even a hurdler in
I always
the
loved when
84
they would
Olympics
measure
and
it
not
when it was
sign a
right
Bears
next to the
contract,
mark.
well, you're going to give him a little bit
Gotta
of
bring
room.
the chains all the way across the field.
And I believe they've grown to
It's
respect
laying
a
on
great
top
deal
of the
Jim
marker.
McMahon's arm.
They're gonna have
as
to move
well.
the
They
marker
figure
to
this guy's liable to
move
do
at the
anything, to
chains.
try anything out there. So
Anything.
they want to give plenty of room.
Gault that much short for the first down.
Good thing they measured, I guess. Shows what we know.
Yeah. Right.
Gault now 6 receptions, 148 yards.
It's a big day for Willie, and probably his best individual game of the season
professional
since we've
career,
already
which began
established
as a #1
that
draft
it
pick.
was his only touchdown. But he did have 8 touchdowns as a
1983.
rookie, so he kind of came in with a flash.
Jim McMahon. I would suspect he'll go with a long count here. He's been going on short counts. He would like to draw the Vikes offside. I'm quite sure of that.
I think he does, doesn't he, or not?
Walter
Maybe
Payton
not.
is the setback. And McMahon.
Yep, there you go.
pinched
So the
nerve in
quarterback,
that ball,
right,
gets the
couldn't
first
play
down, sneak
because
over the
it
left side.
was in traction.
Pinched nerve in his neck.
3rd and inches with the greatest running back of all time
Let's see
behind
a
him.
little
I'll
more
just run a
in
sneak.
traction after the game this
This is the Jim
past
McMahon game.
Sunday, in which the
Walter
Bears beat New
Payton
England
only has a role
20-7.
as a blocker, but an awesome
Spent
one.
a couple days in the hospital. Joe, you were down visiting with him. He had a big horse collar around his neck. He looked like he was really in agony, didn't he?
When I first
He was
saw
eating
him
oats
over
out of
at
a
the Bears
bag,
training
Frank.
camp, he was holding court with about 20 newsmen, and he had this huge harness around his neck.
Did you tell him you're going to go check on Nancy after your...
I told him I'd go
I'd
do a wellness check on
Well, he
Nancy.
almost pulled Ditka's leg too long because Ditka wasn't going to play him tonight because he had not worked
Gotta tell you
out.
what, Nancy,
A
my
first
neck
down. This is
works.
McMahon again, wide open field in front
Just
of him.
don't ask me about my
He
knee.
wants a bundle. Got McKinnon.
Hey!
McKinnon, 3rd touchdown pass tonight for McMahon.
Unreal.
McKinnon second.
Unreal.
A
3rd drive.
43-yard effort, and he is blowing this game away.
He makes things happen.
They don't know what to say.
Now,
Maybe
Great
that's good.
effort by McKinnon. He never gave up on McMahon. He kept full stride.
I'm just
gave him a good
surprised,
angle.
like they're
Let's
not.
watch
They're
it.
so they feel
He's looking back.
subdued.
He knows what's
You
going
just
on.
saw
McMahon
a
will be
quarterback
chased
with
out of the
3
pocket right
touchdowns.
here. There he is. He takes a look. Now he knows what McMahon can do. He tries to give him a plane in which to hit him. And he's right there.
It's hard
Great
to
route.
blame a defensive back when a receiver can run that far
That's a good
and
route.
still catch a pass.
Well said,
A
Arenthal,
lot of
James.
protection. McMahon did an excellent job.
Bears
of
are taking the
scrambling
extra point,
back
and
there,
the
buying
wings
time.
blocking on the extra point
Butler,
are Ron
Logan
Rivera
Burton.
and Wilbermers.
Wow. The second and first round draft
Not
pick,
bad
respectively,
numbers.
the year
5
before.
of 7, 166 yards, and 3 touchdowns. And McKinnon is having another big day.
Yeah, see, this is Silky
And a
D's time
touchdown,
in the
2
camera. I
touchdown
know Willie
passes coming
Gault's a
into the
movie
game. He
star,
has a
but
couple tonight. But
Dennis
McMahon
ain't
has
gonna
been outrageous.
back down. He's got a whole lot to say.
43-yard touchdown. He had a 25-yard touchdown. McMahon hit Willie
Oh,
Gault
he
with a
settled on that
70-yard
one.
touchdown.
Well, there's an old saying that if you can back it up, it ain't bragging.
Yeah, old saying.
And McKinnon was in the paper all week this week with statements that there was no way the Vikings could beat them, that they were a better team and it would be no game if these guys played their ball game. And I gather this is Chicago's ball game. I've never seen them play quite like this.
But that was a tremendous pass.
Well, that's kind of true.
Running to his left and throwing the ball 50 yards. He's got some kind of arm.
Incredible.
He has really turned the
Steve Fuller, Ed Hughes.
Steve's
like,
Ed Hughes?
I could have done that.
Do you know I was a Rhodes Scholar?
They were 1 point down when McMahon came into the game and set off the fireworks.
I mean, he shouldn't even be sweating hardly.
So there's Frank. They were down 1 point when Jim McMahon came in. No, they weren't.
They almost don't even know what to make of it.
It's deep, and this will be Rhymes who bobbles it in the end zone. It'll be touchdown.
I mean, OJ does make a point. I mean,
really don't need all that
sounded
pump up, but
it sounded simplistic.
It just seems to permeate through the entire team.
He was like,
something like that happens.
Yeah, I've never seen the Bears like this before. I guess that's true, and that's what made this team, sadly so unique.
Yeah, so, they're just shit on offense.
Right.
So, yes, the Bears have turned a.
And this is like, if you want to watch just that institutional brutality, it's the next, I guess, what is it? 45 minutes of the Bears defense just teeing off. I mean, I enjoyed it when I watched it.
So
I did
a few things to look for if you're watching the game. Go to about 146-20, and they have a nice shot of the Bears radio booth, where you will see from left to right Jim Hart, Hall of Famer Dick Butkus. And if you don't recognize the guy on the far right with the wispy blonde hair,
is that Dick Gephardt, former Democratic presidential candidate?
It's a pre-toupee Wayne Larrivee.
That's pretty.
And kids, if you didn't know Wayne wore a toupee, I can't help you. He basically had Super Dave Osborne's hair for the last 30 years. But there he is. I didn't realize how blonde he was. Why didn't he get a blonde toupee?
Are we sure that itself is is he not already toupeed up there?
That looks awful.
I didn't remember Wayne Larrivee. That was his rookie year, by the way. This is the first year of this crew. I didn't think of him ever as like a blonde. I wonder if it might be I thought he was brownish.
Yeah,
blackish.
That's why I had to look a couple of times. Well, it has to be Wayne.
It's funny that they just disregard former NFL, still today, all-time Chicago, St. Louis, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, Arizona Cardinal passing leader Jim Hart, an SIU Hall of Famer. They only give credit to Butkus, which of course is completely fine.
Well, the reason is because Joe, all he wants to talk about are guys' knees for the whole rest of the game.
And
he talks about how Dick is actually. We should probably play this because you just wouldn't hear it today. He basically is like, "Oh, Dick says his knees are terrible."
Yeah, and he did. Butkus had the most the goriest knee history of anybody. I feel like
he's the best that I've ever seen. I don't think any player has ever played his position with more aggressiveness and intelligence than Dick Butkus.
On first down, Kramer back again. Trying to get it to Lewis one more time. I noticed the topic of the conversation as Joe was visiting with Dick Butkus had to do with those knees.
Yeah, Dick's having a lot of trouble with his knees right now. And speaking of knees,
that's Anderson.
Oh, maybe that was a clever segue. Because then they show the Viking running back with the ice bag on his knee. Maybe
Alfred Anderson.
Frank to bring up knees. So later on,
but you're right. Namath is obsessed in this broadcast. Namath himself was sort of slowed down by knee injuries, was he not?
Right. His career ended early because of knee, and he was limited late in his career because of terrible knees. He had to retire early because of them. He talks about when they talk about Buster Rhymes that he used to play running back at Oklahoma. Then Joe brings up Marcus Dupree and then talks about how Marcus has just suffered a serious knee injury and his career might be over. And Frank and OJ just completely ignore it. It just hangs there uncomfortably. Yeah, I mean, these guys
just wants to talk about knees.
So for this Monday night booth, it's three Pro Football Hall of Famers. It's the most talented football booth they've ever assembled. And it's just terrible. It's just a god-awful booth. They're all bad at their jobs.
Yeah, it is. This is like that period of Saturday Night Live, like after John Belushi and Gilda Radner and Dan Aykroyd and Bill Murray and everybody left, but before Eddie Murphy, Eddie Murphy and Joe Piscopo kind of started turning it around before they kind of got some sort of a consistent formula. But there was a period where it was just awful, and I feel like this is the equivalent of the history of Monday Night Football until, of course, they went to ESPN, because I can't speak to. They've been all kinds of ups and downs since they went to cable, but in the history of ABC Monday Night Football, this is really the nadir, I would have to say.
Yeah, so that would have been like the even the Tim Kazurinsky and Mary Gross SNL.
But that's
who was the guy? Charlie. Who was the guy who swore?
Charlie Rocket.
Yes.
He killed himself by slitting his own throat about 15 years ago.
Oh,
by the way.
that's...
Yeah.
Well, that brings back. Were you sure OJ wasn't around?
That's bringing it full circle.
Yeah.
No, yeah, you're right. Mary Gross, they were part of that. Tim Kazurinsky, I loved him, Chicago guy. He'd do that psychiatrist. They're like, if your brain is dead, but you're still singing, you have pericoma. And I just thought that was fucking hilarious. It's stuff like that. He would do those weird, but there was a period before them. I don't think anybody notable was there. Maybe it was only like a 2-year period, and it was like that show could have been canceled. Instead it was kind of thrown a lifeline. But
right.
Monday Night Football.
Lauren came back, and Eddie saved it. Lauren came back, and they.
But Monday Night Football was not in danger of being canceled. But they needed to do some shit, because this 3-man crew that they had going on was just like, it was aimless, disjointed, and weird. I mean, this is an incredible ball game, and it's like kind of being counterbalanced by
they did not rise to the occasion.
Right, they're like,
well, they kind of did on the first play. At least Joe yelled out during the first one.
Joe was genuinely enthusiastic, but the rest of it just always feels so stilted. So.
Yeah, so the McKinnon touchdown pass there was 43 yards. That was his second in a row. That made it 30-17. Anthony Carter would catch a long pass from Tommy Kramer to pull the Vikings to within 6 in the fourth quarter, but then Kevin Butler made a field goal, and the Bears went up by 9, and that was the winning margin.
So Carter caught 2, and I think his first one was his first as an NFLer, by the way. Not that he had an NFL Hall of Fame career, but he had some notable moments. I didn't actually watch this after. Good for you to follow it through, or maybe you're just reading the recap.
Yeah,
Anthony Carter.
Anthony
Carter had himself a game, and he have a bigger game against the Niners in '87 when Chris Carter joined him, but Chris Carter wasn't here yet.
Yeah, so Anthony Carter, fresh off the USFL, was a 25-year-old rookie. He would catch 8 touchdown passes that season. So, and he caught 7, 6, 4, 8, 5.
He had a better NFL career than I remembered, actually, overall. Because I was just thinking about that Niners upset, but he actually had a really good career.
He would be the Bears' all-time leading receiver by more than 2,000
Vikings.
Yards.
Is that?
No, he would be the Bears.
Oh, 7,000?
Yeah,
he's got
7,636.
And what is he on the Vikings? Like 4th or 5th, probably. Or I mean, Ahmad Rashad was probably past that. And Randy Moss. Jesus Christ, the Vikings probably have. I'm gonna say. I'm just going to, since we're talking about it, the Vikings have at least 6. They might even have a tight end. Maybe a Joe Sensa.
6 more than Johnny Morris?
6 receivers who have more career receiving yards than Johnny Morris's 5,000 and whatever it is, 67.
You're wrong. They have 7.
That went too low.
Chris Carter, 12,383. Then Randy Moss, who did his all in 11 seasons, 93-16. Anthony Carter's 3rd.
Wow.
Jake Reed, 4th. Sammy White.
Running back? No. Sammy White was
wide receiver of the 70s.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Steve Jordan, who we saw in this game,
is a tight end. So they do have a tight end.
This season, Adam Thielen would have moved past Johnny, and Ahmad Rashad is within just a few yards of Johnny.
Oh, well, he retired.
Johnny's over 5,500, right? Ahmad's 54.89.
No, I thought Johnny. I'll look it up. I thought
the indignity. Do we have 8?
Johnny just cleared 5,000. I'll look that up while you stay there, but I'm pretty sure we've looked at it often enough. You'd think one of us would have it committed to memory.
I thought it was
I
5,500,
thought,
but I could be wrong.
yeah, I think he had for the Bears 5,059 yards.
Oh shit. Well, yeah. So
incredible, just incredible. So Bobby Moore's got to beat then, huh?
Bobby Moore by any name. Bobby Moore, Ahmad Rashad.
And so, who was the guy 2 ahead of Steve Jordan? I forget who you said who that was.
Jake Reed.
Was Jake Reed a tight end too?
No, he's a big wide receiver.
He was a receiver. He was big, but
he would have been there. He was there during the Chris Carter years.
Right, but he was but he wasn't a tight end because but before Randy Moss, right? He probably bridged them from Anthony Carter to Randy Moss.
Him and Randy would have played together for like 3 or 4 years.
But not a tight end. But Steve Jordan, obviously, in this game was. So the Vikings have at least one receiver with more career receiving yards than the Bears, all-time leading receiver.
Willie Jake Reed, wide receiver, 6'3", 216, from Grambling.
That is big. All right. HBCU.
So more Bear indignity.
Yeah, throw it on the pile. Someday, we'll have a guy.
But yeah, the Bears covered, and the game went over. So that's good.
They covered. Imagine the gamblers at halftime of this game.
Yeah,
on both sides.
Vikings were 3.5.
Vikings were obviously getting 3.5 at home, right? Or no, were they giving? You said
they were giving. Bears were 3.5 point favorites
because they were 2-0, and Bud Grant was back, and they beat the Niners in Week 1, and nobody really believed in the Bears yet. Wow. Yeah. So 17-9, right after the first drive of the second half, they were feeling pretty good.
So, yeah, I mean, sure, Jim McMahon, fine. 13 of 18 for 124 yards. No, sorry, that was Steve Fuller. Jim McMahon, 8 of 15 for 236 yards and 3 touchdowns.
Wow.
But Tommy Kramer, 28 for 55 for 436 and 3 touchdowns. And 3 interceptions.
Not quite as good as
and he got sacked 4 times
3 years ago. Only 3. Okay. It was actually an improved performance for the Vikings because, as we said, the Bears swept them the year before. We've talked about both games, one in which the Bears won the division on that turf late in the season, but the other one was when they sacked poor old 39-year-old Archie Manning about 11 times. Both games were blowouts. So, Bud Grant, obviously, say what you want about him, but he, pretty good coach.
Let's see. The Bears had interceptions by Leslie Frazier, Wilbur Marshall, which we saw, and Otis Wilson. They got sacks from... Oh, they don't list sacks. They got 4 sacks, but why aren't they listed on the thing?
Well, we saw McMichael get one, and I assume Dent had one.
A little disappointed in the record keeping there.
Yeah, Pro Football is not quite the same as Baseball Reference.
Yeah. Gonna have to hire some kids to go back through and rescore all these games.
Yeah, it's out there, folks.
And it turns out, I would guess it was hard to read, but I don't think it was a Go Mike Malarkey banner that I saw. I believe it was a Go Mark Mullaney banner. Oh, he had a sack. Oh no, there's sacks. Steve McMichael had 2. Hampton had 1. Dent and Ron Rivera.
Yeah, right.
They both had half a sack.
Chico was the second round. So the Bears in '84 drafted linebackers in the first 2 rounds. Wilbur out of Florida and Chico out of, I think it was Berkeley. And Chico had a good career. Mm-hmm. Finks really went out in style at the end. But Wilbur, my one thought, we saw that Wilbur and Dewerson got footage tonight, and I made a reference to them being replacement players, not quite in the same spirit as '87, but of course, for those that might not remember, the Bears had 2 very good players on the '84 team that held out. Todd Bell was a strong safety, and Al Harris, who was Dan Hampton's old colleague, another first-round pick in '79, who moved to outside linebacker. And they were replaced by Wilbur Marshall and Dave Dewerson. And I think I mentioned this before. I'm just going to say it one more time, that we felt Wilbur throughout the course of the season was definitely an upgrade over Harris. We weren't so sure about Dewerson because Todd Bell was such a hitter.
Yep.
I mean, we went over the Redskins game and he was really developing. And but as it turned out, that season, Dave Dewerson earned a trip to the Pro Bowl along with like 7 other Bears, and Wilbur didn't, which we thought he would. And Wilbur then subsequently took out his frustration on Joe Ferguson.
Yes.
The rest is history.
Yeah, so we talk about the 83 draft for the Bears.
It's incredible.
For a good reason. They drafted 2 Hall of Famers. Jimbo Covert, 6th overall, and Richard Dent, 203rd. He was the 8th round pick. But they drafted, in one draft, they got Willie Gault, Jimbo Covert, Mike Richardson, Dave Duerson, Pat Dunsmore, Tom Thayer, Mark Bortz, Richard Dent, and of course, Mark Zavagnin, Rob Feda.
Of course.
Anthony
I remember
Hutchinson,
Rob Feda. Rob Feda wore 64.
Gary Worthy, and Oliver Williams.
Even Rob Feda hung around long enough for me to remember him. Hell of a draft. We could talk about it some other time because we're out here, but it is funny that Jim Finks was actually on his way out because he was, kind of overridden when the old man came down from the mountain to hire Ditka. Not Finks' hire, but he stuck around, thankfully, for the 83 draft. And turned out that he'd be able to hang his head on the Bears thanks to – he drafted Otis in 80 and Van Horn in 81, but it took them a while to develop. He drafted Hampton. He drafted Peyton. It didn't happen for Finks right away like it did in Minnesota and New Orleans, but that 83 draft is what really did it. He was pretty much gone when all those guys came along. So,
but I wanted to run down the 84 draft. Not quite as good, but, he got Wilbur Marshall with the 11th pick, Ron Rivera with the 44th, Stephon Humphreys and Tom Andrews, so a couple of backup
75
linemen.
and 60, yeah. Yep.
Nikita Robertson from Central Arkansas, who never played for the Bears. Brad Anderson.
It was in this game, caught one of his only 2 receptions.
Mark Casale, quarterback from Montclair State, the 9th round. In the 10th round, a round they don't even have, Sean Gale.
Wow.
And in the 11th round, they took Mark Butkus from Illinois.
Illinois, because he went to the Rose Bowl in the 83 Illinois team. Yeah, he was Butkus' nephew, actually. Were Stephon Humphreys and Tom Andrews both in the Black and Blues poster?
Yes.
Wow. But Andy Frederick was not, I don't think. 71. He was in this game. He got in first now. Okay. Okay. Yeah, good.
Way to find out.
Well, good offensive line, man. It's just, this is one we've talked obviously before about how the NFC was uniquely dominant in the 80s. And the Bears are part of that discussion based on one season. This is it. So it's not, you're going over all this talent. We're seeing it, and this was it in full effect.
All right, here's the Black and Blues Brothers poster. It's from left to right. 60, Tom Andrews, Mark Bortz, Tom Thayer,
57,
Keith Van Horn,
78,
Jay Hilgenberg,
63,
Kurt Becker, Tom Andrews,
79,
Stephon Humphreys,
75,
and Jimbo Covert,
74. Yeah, all right, they all made it. Yeah, it was finally a complete picture for one of the few times in our history. Defenses have been great oftentimes, running backs have been great oftentimes, but we had a quarterback, we had receivers, we had offensive linemen. It was an embarrassment of riches. Didn't last as long as we hoped, but we sure fucking enjoyed it while it was there, right? Mm-hmm. And it didn't
thanks to the teams they fielded since. We're still forced to enjoy it. It just happened because it's the only Super Bowl team we have, the only Super Bowl winner that we have.
That's right. Be that as it may.
And most of that team won a road playoff game.
They did the year before, right? Everybody that played in this game, I didn't see Fridge Perry in this game. He was still sort of shackled to the bench.
He must have played because they did talk about him.
Special teams,
and they made he was playing tackle.
Okay, because Hartenstein was still playing. It was Hartenstein's injury that forced Buddy to play.
Either Joe or Frank talked about how Buddy had said he was a wasted draft pick,
right?
And they said, well, clearly he's already showing that he's not going to be a wasted draft pick. So.
Okay, yeah, and he did.
Even by week 3. The perceptive Monday night guys were like, no, Fridge, he'll be all right.
I loved Mike Hartenstein. I always felt bad that he, had aged and injured himself off of that starting line, but they were better off with just plugging that middle with Fridge and moving Hampton back outside. I'm sorry. Hampton moved inside right? Who are the ends on 80? No, Hampton moved outside, right?
Yeah.
Because McMichael and Fridge were inside.
It depended. So they rotated guys around. Later, like maybe even the next year, Fridge would play significant amounts of tackle, but you had a lot where your tackles were Hampton and McMichael. And then you had Fridge, and then the other end could be anybody from like Tyrone Keys.
That's right.
Who's the other guy that used to play out there?
Oh God, but yeah, Tyrone Keys is the guy that Richard Dent passed up. I happened to know. I didn't know it at the time, but I somehow stumbled across him and saw that he was getting more snaps than Dent, like 83, kind of 83, 84. Took Dent a while to get Buddy's trust.
Henry Wachter.
Oh, good old number 70. Got a sack. Got a
bit.
Safety in the Super Bowl. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, and then I don't know if you saw the clip of Madden explaining the 46 defense.
It was awesome
that I posted, and he did
he
did a John Madden Super Bowl preview show on it was in '85, even though CBS didn't have the game.
I know. I remember watching it.
And
he did, and you said it, and you did an awesome job summarizing that. When Madden died, just like the whole arc and really what it meant for the Bears. We're talking about this season here, and we'll just repeat it. That Madden hadn't done any games yet. He would start doing them with Dallas, I think. Dallas, Atlanta. He did the Jets late in the season, both playoff games, and the Bears. He never saw the Bears give up a touchdown.
He did 5 games, and the Bears never gave up a touchdown.
5 NFL games, 2 of which were playoff games. You're right. CBS did not. I guess the last thing I just want to mention, my thoughts about Madden, when I was like processing, I enjoyed the documentary. I watched it after he died, and I thought it was obviously really well done. It hit all the points. But there was that relationship with those 80s Bears because it sort of coincided with his own ascendancy, really. I mean, he kind of became a thing when like Montana and the Niners are winning, but the Bears are really sort of in the thick of that. And he really, God, he just really associated with them and just seemed to go out of his way to, it was just a perfect time.
Yeah. I mean, in hindsight, it feels like he felt like they were the closest thing personality wise to the Raiders teams that he had coached.
I think so.
And so he liked how much fun they had while they were kicking everybody's ass.
I think it's what kind of fueled the All-Madden team. That All-Madden team in '85, I remember, had like 11 Bears. By the way, he had like silly stuff. He had Fridge in there, I think, for back. He got goofy. The All-Madden team was like 80% of an All-Pro team. Really, he wasn't being completely shtick, but there was like this gray area, and it wasn't completely meatball. There was like people that were a little bit underlooked, or just provided something that didn't show up, and for whatever reason, the '85 Bears were like. Just filled. I remember watching the All-Madden special that year, and they just filled the hell out of that roster.
So I learned something today that I wish I didn't know, and that was that. Do you know who the coach of the 1994 All-Madden team was? He used to pick a coach too.
Was it Wani?
It was Wani. Wani was bragging about it today. It's like, shut up. One of the things that came out when just as people were going back over Madden's career was obviously he was popular because he was the perfect blend of a football analyst who was clearly excited when exciting things happened, but he would also take the time to actually explain why things were happening. People felt like they were learning things that they otherwise might not have known. Totally. And then he had the fortuitous timing of, as he made it big, the NFC, which CBS had all the great teams, and so
comes back to your point about them being historically great.
Right. So he was there, and he's the sound. Him and Pat are the soundtrack to the '85 Bears and the '86 Giants and the Montana 49ers and the Redskins.
Yep.
And then all the way up to the Cowboys getting good again, and the second run of the Niners and Favre, which he loved Favre.
I know. Yeah, I know, but still. You take the good with the bad. We definitely had our good part of it because,
So meanwhile, poor, I don't even know who, after Merlin, who even was NBC.
Well, and that was the other thing is that I didn't finish my thought, I guess, but like CBS did not have the Super Bowl, but Madden did that thing. And I don't want to disrespect Dick Enberg and Merlin Olsen, who love them, but there was almost a little bit, and I never thought this until Madden died. I'm like, God, it's almost a little bit of regret that he wasn't in the booth for the Super Bowl. Although it's fine because Merlin also was a good analyst. Mm-hmm. Dick Enberg was the voice of generations. It worked out fine that he didn't do the game. It's really kind of a small quibble. And besides, he did the 2 shutouts. Upon further review, it worked out fine. But I did think that for a minute. I'm like, oh, it would have been nice if Med was actually there at their crowning moment. But you can't have everything.
I mean, it would have been better if it had been Don Criqui and Bob Trumpy, but you can't have.
That's right.
You can't have everything.
We just knew that Tim Ryan and Johnny Morris were thousands of miles
Couldn't
away.
NBC have just said, you know what, guys, we're gonna borrow Tim and Johnny for the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Sorry, Dick Merlin. I'm gonna sit this one out. Bear fans deserve it. So, all right, well that was fun. So
I enjoyed it.
85 Bears. So I don't know who the Bears are playing in the playoffs next week. For next week's Remember This Crap. Oh, that's right. It's over. We could do Remember This Crap. The Bears fire their coaches. We could just go through Bear coach firings. Let's
do absolute rock bottom low points in Bears history. We do 74, 82. Let's see, 99 is the all-time one. The Dave McGinnis one, though, would have to be a feature because I still don't know if we'll get lower than that. And then the end of the Trustman era, and then this. That marks 5 real low points.
Yeah, and it's funny. It'll be interesting to look back in a few years and see if we think this is it or if a year ago was. Before Justin Fields.
Because of Fields.
Now, it's ridiculous that they wasted an entire season, but that's kind of what the Bears do.
But they could still pull out in spite of themselves.
But the idea is you have a much more attractive coaching position this year than you would have even this time last year, because there will be coaches who absolutely, unlike Nagy pretending that he was cool with Mitch, you will have actual coaches who want to coach Justin Fields. So
yes, but I do think and we have been for 5 weeks ever since the rumors were out. And we got all excited prematurely that Nagy was gonna get fired before the end of the season, which would grant us the novelty of an interim coach for the first time. It's like the last 5 weeks have just felt like a 5-week, historic low point. And I'm like, we've been here before, as bad as it's been. It's not every year, but I do wonder where maybe this shapes up, but I don't know.
Yeah, it feels less hopeless than the end of the Trustman era.
That did feel bad.
I mean, so when Fox came in the next year, he brought Vic Fangio. People forget that, but Vic predated. Vic stuck around, kind of Buddy Ryan-esque, to coach with Nagy. And Vic said at the time that the roster Fox and him inherited was worse than an expansion team. Because the veterans were either leaving or were still there but couldn't play anymore. And they had drafted so poorly under Phil Emery that there was nothing. So,
yeah, that would be a sort of qualification for a low point. 82 wouldn't qualify in that level, although for other levels, because organizationally they were got a 86-year-old owner still grieving the loss of his son. He's overriding his general manager, but they did have Peyton and Hampton and Singletary and Wilson. So they had talent. They had talent when I guess I don't know if they had talent when Wannstedt left. I can't even. I don't know if I have the strength to explore that, but that's a good point. Yeah, they really had nothing organizationally and personnel-wise at the end of the Trustman era. So, it might be fun to talk about that. And then afterwards, I'll go slit my wrists.
Yep. Everyone get real depressed. All right. Well, this has been fun going through an entire Bears season for the second time in a row.
Looking backwards.
We did cheat a little bit, but I think we
did.
These division games were fun because we found a way to put a spin on stuff we'd already done.
I think so.
The Vikings, we just found 2 games and did those instead. So that was good.
Yeah. And there are more, if
there's a never-ending collection of crap.
If our audience is demanding more content, I'm sure we could dive into plenty of other games. I'm sure plenty are springing into your mind, but yeah. So
I was thinking we'll take a couple of weeks off, and then we can remember famous work stoppages in baseball history.
Let's do it.
So that'll be great. All right. Well, we'll see what happens next.
Sounds good.
But thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Andy. See you later.
Many of us have herpes.